order. Well, good morning. Welcome to the launch of our Science, Innovation and Technology Select Committee inquiry into food security. And I'm delighted this morning we have two evidence sessions, and to welcome to Dr. Ismahane and Professor Cristobal, who are going to open our session on some of the global issues that this goes to the heart of. And then we have a second session looking at agronomy and some of the specific technologies. Let me just set the scene. In 2010, Sir John Beddington, the government chief scientist, warned this Parliament that if we wanted to avoid mass famines and starvation, we had to double global food production by 2050 on the same land area with half as much water and energy. Mm-hmm. If we didn't, we would have famines and hundreds of millions of people migrating out of Africa and other places. Broadly, we haven't, as a UK, properly responded to that challenge. In fact, agricultural productivity has fallen, and our reliance on international food imports has risen. Yesterday, the All-Party Group for Agricultural Science and Technology launched its food security report and summit that a number of us were at. So that rather sets the scene. And I wanted to start by asking you both, with distinguished backgrounds, perhaps Dr. Ismahane first, given your global background, to say something about how big that global challenge is, how other countries are responding to it, and where you see the UK playing a role. We as a Science Select Committee look at the incredibly powerful science that we've got and think we could be helping to solve that challenge. So could I ask you to say something about the global challenge, how big it is, and where the UK fits in? And Professor Cristobal, if I could then ask you, this government has rightly set out a food security strategy, an industrial strategy, a trade and investment strategy. How confident are you that agri-science research is going to be embedded in that to tackle that global food security challenge? But Dr. Ismahane, perhaps I could turn to you first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and really a pleasure to be here with you. So in terms of really the global challenges, what we are seeing is that the number of malnutrition and people under hunger or extreme hunger is on the rise. And the funny part, it has been on the rise since 2017. So we signed, all of us, the Global Development Agenda in 2015 in Paris, and right after a few years, the numbers start crippling up. Of course, with COVID, that was a huge hit, where we got, again, the numbers rising up because it disrupts also the supply chain. And also with the Ukraine war, again, the numbers went up. So there is really a history behind. The issue is that extreme poverty is, we have about 300 million people still in extreme poverty, which means, I always say, they could die from hunger. But in poverty or malnutrition and triple hunger, particularly on malnutrition, we have about still 740 million people. That's based on the latest number from FAO and WFP. And when you look at the reasons behind, it always says conflict is number one. Second, it's climate change. So what you said, Mr. Chairman, about that we are producing less, it's a reality because we are not adapting well to the climate change. So the rise of temperature, the changes in the variation, it's a reality everywhere. So we are seeing floods in places where it didn't used to rain. We're seeing drought in a region that didn't have drought before. So that variability is a reality, and it's going to get even worse with climate change. So climate change impact, it's heat, which makes it that most of the crops we have today might not produce as much as we produce today. There is variability per se. There is also, with the heat, insect and pest movement going to be erratic. So we have models that have worked for some time, but even IPCC in the latest report said the model for weather forecasting is not working anymore because the data we have is completely different from today. So climate change is still a big issue that we need to pay attention to.
Can I ask, the world has set targets on climate change. Have we set targets at international level on food security?
Mm-hmm. Normally, yes. We have the target in terms of productivity. There is the number that says we need to produce 70% more by 2050. But in reality, it's not 70%. If I want to go, and I'm scientific, so we have to do it per region, what it says that in Africa as a continent, for example, it needs to produce almost 99% more. In Middle East and North Africa, they need to produce 46% more. In Asia, we need about 45% more. The rest of the world does not need to produce more because they are already at the top up.
Thank you.
That diversification is very important.
I don't want to hog all the questions because we've got colleagues coming. Professor Cristobal, thank you. Can I ask you just to talk about the UK? How strong a sector is this, and how strong a signal are we sending to our sector to rally to this?
I think that clearly, the UK punches above its weight in terms of the research we do. You just heard from Tropic, based at the research park, how we can really deliver when we have the right regulatory environment and when we have the right funding and partnerships to allow us to achieve that. So in the sense of what the UK can contribute, it's huge. One of the things that when we talk about what the UK can do, of course, funding that innovative research, that discovery research, which is the engine to then allow us to deliver then on products that work in partnership with Ismahane and colleagues at CGIAR to be able to deliver that. That's one of the key things, to continue that funding, and that funding also includes social science, which is something that sometimes we don't think about. I'm, of course, from the biological sciences, but to really deliver things on the ground, we need to work with social science to make sure that those partnerships deliver on the ground rather than just stay in the greenhouses and ignore it. So we need to take that extra step. One of the other things that is really important that the UK can contribute extremely well is on in-country innovation, so supporting in-country innovation, and mainly through education. So one of the things that with these new technologies, with the rapid pace, with the ability to genome sequence many of our crops, suddenly technology is becoming one of the key accelerators. And one of the work that we have done together with the Earlham Institute in Norwich and also with ILRI, a CG Centre, we developed a 9-month bioinformatics training course. And that was really essential because instead of them having to tell us what to do, we developed a course that was based on local knowledge with 15 scientists from Africa. And they were actually the keys to drive the first sequencing of African crops based on African scientists. And that was a key breakthrough. With instead of having us sequence, they led the sequence.
Brilliant. You've used the keyword Africa, which is my segue to Chi, our chair.